Hello everybody, welcome into another lesson. So today we are going to talk about cylinders. Cylinders are largely like prisms. You can almost think of them like prisms because they have two bases. The biggest thing that sets them apart, instead of the bases being a polygon, they're circles. They're congruent circles. So that's what a cylinder is. Of course, you have the radius of the circle, and then you have the height of the cylinder. Going from one base to the other base is the height of the cylinder. Now, to find the lateral area of a cylinder, it's largely like the lateral area of a prism. The lateral area of a prism, of course, is the perimeter of the base times the height. Well, it's the same idea with a cylinder. It's the perimeter, or really the circumference, if you will, of a base times the height of the prism. That's how you find the lateral area, which is just the region that connects the two bases. That's the lateral area, how you find that. And then the surface area is the lateral area plus twice the area of one of the bases, since there's two bases. And then you have the volume, which is the area of the base times the height of the cylinder. So we'll get into some exercises here with cylinders. I'm going to keep this up because it could prove useful. There's going to be 8 exercises today. First 4 will be real easy. The second 4, not so much. But for the first cylinder, you have a radius of 4 and you have a height of 5. So the radius is 4 units, the height is 5 units. First, we want to investigate the lateral area. Well, the lateral area of a cylinder, of course, is equal to the circumference of a base times the height of a cylinder. Well, we know the height, but we don't know the circumference. We need to find that. What is the circumference of a circle? What's the formula for that? Well, that's 2 pi times r, right? The circumference is 2 pi r. In this case, it would be 2 pi times that radius of 4. So the circumference itself would equal 8 pi. And we're going to leave everything in terms of pi. Now that we've found the circumference, we can find the lateral area. The lateral area, of course, is equal to the circumference of the circle times the height of the cylinder, which in this case would be 8 pi times that height of 5 units. So this would give you a lateral area for the cylinder of 40 pi square units. So the lateral area would be 40 pi square units. So now we know the lateral area to be 40 pi square units. Let's go on to the surface area. The surface area, of course, equals the lateral area plus twice the area of a base. Well, we know the lateral area, we don't know the area of a base yet. What is the area of a base being a circle? Well, the area formula for a circle is pi r squared, which would equal pi times that radius of 4 to the second power, which would give you a base area of 16 pi square units. So now we know the base area to be 16 pi square units, we can find the surface area. So the surface area equals the lateral area of 40 pi square units plus twice the area of the base, which is 16 pi square units, which would give you 40 pi square units plus 32 pi square units. So you should get a surface area for this cylinder of 72 pi square units. So the surface area would equal 72 pi square units. Now we just need to find the volume. The volume, of course, equals the area of the base times the height of the cylinder. Well, the area of the base was deemed to be 16 pi, then times the height of the cylinder, which was 5 units. So you should get a volume of 80 pi cubic units. So the volume of the cylinder would be 80 pi cubic units. And I got more examples here. Alright, so the next one we have a radius of 8 units and a height of 10 units for the cylinder. So the radius is 8, the height is 10. Well, let's go ahead, let's start with the lateral area. The lateral area of a cylinder, of course, equals the circumference of the base, of which is a circle, times the height of the cylinder. Well, the circumference, we need to find that first, of course, is 2 pi r, which would give you 2 pi times that radius of 8, which would give you a circumference of 16 pi. So the circumference of the base is 16 pi. Now we can find the lateral area, since we know the circumference to be 16 pi, times the height of the cylinder, which is 10 units, which would give you a lateral area of 160 pi square units. So we have the lateral area of the cylinder being 160 pi square units. Now, of course, we need to go on to find the surface area. Surface area equals, again, the lateral area plus twice the area of the base. Well, here's the thing, we don't know the area of the base yet. So the area of the base, of course, being a circle, the formula is pi r squared. So you would take pi times that radius of 8 to the second power, which would give you a base area of 64 pi. So the base area for this cylinder is 64 pi. And then now, since we know the base area, we can proceed to finding the lateral area. So that's going to equal the lateral area of 160 pi plus 2 times the base area of 64 pi, which would equal 160 pi plus 128 pi. So that would give you a total surface area of 288 pi square units. So the surface area for the cylinder would be 288 pi square units. Now, last but not least, we can find the volume. So the volume, of course, is the area of the base times the height of the cylinder, which the area of the base was 64 pi square units. Take that times your height of 10 units for the cylinder, which would give you a volume of 640 pi cubic units. So the volume of this cylinder would be 640 pi cubic units. All right, what's next? We have a radius of 4 and then a height of 3. So we have a cylinder with a radius of 4 and a height of 3. Well, start with the lateral area, of course. That's equal to the circumference of the base times the height of the cylinder. Well, we know the height, we just don't know the circumference. So the circumference would equal, of course, the formula for that is 2 pi r, which would be 2 pi times that radius of 4, which would give you a circumference of 8 pi. So the circumference of the base is 8 pi. Now we can find the lateral area since we know the circumference and the height. That, of course, would equal the circumference of 8 pi times your height of 3 units, which would give you a lateral area of 24 pi square units. So the lateral area for this cylinder would be 24 pi square units. Now we can go on to the surface area. The surface area, of course, of a cylinder is the lateral area plus twice the area of the base. Well, we don't know the area of the base yet. We know the lateral area, but we don't know the area of the base. Formula for area of a circle, the area of the base, would be pi r squared, which would be pi times that radius of 4 squared, which would give you an area of the base being 16 pi square units. Now we can really find the surface area since we know the lateral area and the area of the base. That's equal to your lateral area of 24 pi plus 2 times the area of the base, which would be 16 pi, which would give you 24 pi plus 32 pi, which would give you a surface area of 56 pi square units. So you have a surface area for the cylinder of 56 pi square units. And then last but not least, we'll find the volume. The volume, of course, is the area of the base times the height of the cylinder, which would be the area of the base itself was 16 pi times your height of 3 units, giving you a total volume of 48 pi cubic units. So the volume of this cylinder would be 48 pi cubic units. Alright. Last easy one, then it gets a little bit harder. Alright, so we have a radius of 8, and this time a height of 15. So we have a cylinder that has a radius of 8 units and a height of 15 units. Well, let's start with the lateral area. The lateral area of the of the cylinder, of course, is the circumference of the base times the height of the prism. Again, I'm saying prism cylinder. Well, first we need to find the circumference. We know the height, that's great, but we need to know the circumference. Formula for circumference of a circle is 2 pi r, which would be 2 pi times that radius of 8, which would give you a circumference of 16 pi units. We know the circumference now to be 16 pi. Let's find the lateral area. That's going to equal that circumference of 16 pi times the height of the cylinder, 15 units. So now we need to find 16 pi times 15. Yep, it would give you 240 pi square units. So the lateral area of this prism, I keep saying it, the lateral area of the cylinder would be 240 pi square units. Now let's go on to find the surface area. The surface area, of course, is the lateral area itself plus twice the area of the base. One problem though, we don't know the area of the base, but we're about to, because the formula for the area of a circle is pi r squared, which would give you pi times that radius of 8 squared, which would give you a base area for the circle of 64 pi square units. Now we can find the surface area. Surface area would equal that lateral area of 240 pi square units plus 2 times that base area of 64 pi square units. So that would equal 240 pi plus 128 pi, which would give you a total surface area for the cylinder of 368 pi square units. So you got the surface area for the cylinder being 368 pi square units. Now, of course, we'll find the volume. The volume equals the area of the base times the height of the cylinder. Well, area of the base was 64 pi. You'll take that times the height of the cylinder, which was 15 units, and then you'll get a value for your volume. So I gotta take 64 times 15. That'd be 960. So 960 pi more specifically. So the volume of this cylinder is 960 pi cubic units. Okay, so we got something a little bit different here now. We got 4 exercises, but there's different information given. Alright, so what do they give us? They give you that the volume of this cylinder is 64 pi cubic units. We got the volume this time. We also got that the radius equals the height. They want you to find the radius. So, okay, we have that the volume of this cylinder is 64 pi. The radius equals the height. Find the radius. So we obviously need to solve for the radius. We know the volume 64 pi. So what you want to do in a case like this, take that volume formula, which is the base times the height, set that equal to the actual volume itself, which is 64 pi. Well, what is the base? What is the area of a base of the circle? In this case, it would be pi r squared times h. That would equal 64 pi. And then the height itself equals the radius, so you would get pi r squared, you would get pi r squared times r equals 64 pi, since the radius equals the height, which would really give you pi r to the third equals 64 pi. Now we can divide both sides by pi and get r to the third by itself, which would equal 64. Then take the cube root of both sides, you would get r equals 4. So the radius of this cylinder would be 4. So it's a bit of knowing the circumference of a circle formula or the area of a circle formula, and then if r is equal to h, substituting those values in and just doing some simple algebra. I got 3 more problems like this. Okay. This time you are given that the lateral area equals 18 pi square units. You're given the lateral area. You're even given that the height equals 6. They want you to find the radius. So you start out with your lateral area equals 18 pi, your height equals 6, find the radius. Well, here's the thing. What is the formula for the lateral area if we're ultimately going to solve for r? The lateral area formula is really the circumference of the circle times the height. That's going to equal, of course, your actual lateral area of 18 pi. So take your formula for the lateral area, set that equal to what the lateral area is given. Okay, now the circumference of a circle is what? 2 pi r. You would just take that times the height itself would equal 18 pi. Well, what is the height? That's 6. So you'll have 2 pi r times 6 equals 18 pi, which would then give you that 12 pi r equals 18 pi. Now we can solve for r. First, let's divide both sides by 12 pi. So you'll get the value of the radius. The radius equals, of course, 18 pi over 12 pi. Well, the pi's definitely cancel out. Now, what's 18 divided by 12? It's 3/2. So you'll end up getting a radius of 3/2 units, or 1/2. 1.5 rather. 3/2 or 1.5 units would be the answer for the radius of this cylinder. 2 more problems. Alright. So this time the volume of the cylinder equals 72 pi cubic units. They even give you that the height equals 8. They want you to find the lateral area. So they give you that the volume, of course, is 72 pi. They even give you that the height is 8, but they want you to find the lateral area. Well, before we can find any type of area, what do we need? We definitely need to find the radius. So what is the formula for the volume of a cylinder? Ultimately, it's the area of the base times the height, which would equal that volume of 72 pi. Well, what is the area of the base being a circle? That would be pi r squared, then times your height would equal 72 pi. Well, they actually give you that the height is 8, so you'll end up having 8 pi r squared equals 72 pi. Now you can divide both sides by 8 pi. You'll end up getting r squared by itself is equal to 9. Which then you can just solve for the radius. That would equal 3. Well, that's great that we know the radius. It's going to go a long way to helping us, but we really need to find the lateral area. What is the lateral area of a cylinder? It's ultimately the circumference times the height of the cylinder, which the circumference of a circle is 2 pi r. You'll take that, multiply it by the height, which now will give you, of course, 2 pi times your radius of 3 times your height of 8, which would give you a lateral area of, I don't know why I'm writing like that, 48 pi square units. So in the end, you get a lateral area of 48 pi square units. And I got just one more problem, then we're done. All right, this time you're going to be given, ooh, good one. You're given that the surface area equals 100 pi square units. What else are you given? You're also given that the radius equals the height. You're supposed to find the radius. All right. So right away you're given that the surface area of this cylinder is 100 pi square units. They also give you the fact that the radius and height are equal. Find the radius. So what is the formula for the surface area? Well, the surface area, of course, equals ultimately the lateral area plus twice the area of a base, right? Okay, so in this case, you'll take that formula for the surface area, which will be the lateral area plus 2 times the area of a base, set that equal to 100 pi, since that's what the surface area is. Now this is where we got to get a bit creative. What's the formula for a lateral area of a circle? A lateral area of a cylinder? The circumference times the height of the prism, right? Plus, of course, twice the area of the base would still equal 100 pi. Well, what is the circumference of a circle? That, of course, is equal to 2 pi r times the height plus, now what is the area of a base being a circle? It's pi r squared. So you'd have plus 2 pi r squared equal to 100 pi. Well, they also tell you that the radius and the height are equal. So you could substitute r in for h, you end up getting 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r squared equal to 100 pi. Which would really give you 4 pi r squared equals 100 pi. Now you can divide both sides by 4 pi, you'll end up getting the radius squared equals 25, thus giving you a radius of 5. And that would be your answer. You'd have a radius for the cylinder being 5. So if you know how to substitute in formulas for circumference and area of a circle, this should largely be pretty easy for you if you have to work backwards. It's not as bad as it looks. So that's it for cylinders. Next lesson we will talk about cones. So I hope everyone has a great day. Take care.